Hi, welcome back to Genesis Custom Sabers. My name is Rob, and I have a tip for you today. If you've been doing sabers as long as I have, eventually you're going to run into this problem where your blade is too tight for a good fit. Either the machining on the aluminum is just a thousandth of an inch a little too small, or more likely, your blade material is inconsistent, and sometimes a blade will fit really great, and then the next batch will be a little bit bigger and just a little too tight. And rather than try to work it in and make it fit, especially with NeoPixel blades that require a nice precise fit, I'm going to show you how to get that precise fit. Now, ideally what you want is a blade that goes in all the way snugly but without any twisting and holds itself in even without the blade retention screw when you hold it upside down. That is a precise and ideal fit. And that's what we'll be aiming to achieve with these three techniques. Okay, the first thing you're going to need to do is prep work. So take your time, do it properly, and you'll be glad that you did. So, got the blade here, got the saber that it doesn't quite fit into. First thing is you need to recognize what kind of blade you're dealing with. This, as you can tell, is a pixel blade. I'll show you. It's got the PCB there. You want to make sure that you do not scratch that or sand that, so you might want to put a piece of masking tape over top of that, depending on the style that you're going to be using. If you have a hollow blade and an LED in the saber, then what you'll want to do is you'll want to ball up some cotton and stick it inside the blade, or wad up some paper towel, stick inside the blade, just so that none of the particles that you're sanding off are going to fall down the blade and then show up when the blade is illuminated. So you want to block that off, and you could reach in with the pliers and gently pull that out when you're done. Of course, with a pixel blade, we don't need to do that. We also need to take care that we're not going to damage our little pins that are in there. So we need to measure how far we're going to sand. And the simple way to do that is you take a little pencil, something with a soft end, and you just gently press that in as far as it will go. That gives you your blade socket depth. You hold your little finger there. That's your dimension right there. So then you basically just measure on your blade. Put your thumb there, approximately how far you want to sand. Put a little mark with a pencil. And that's the portion that we want to sand off. We don't want to sand off any of this portion because that will be visible when the blade is in the saber. And to take care of that, we're just going to use a little piece of masking tape. And I'm going to go right next to my portion there. And I'm going to mask that off. I'm going to fold this over so it's easy to remove. This will help protect it from sanding, and it'll also give me a great visual guide where I want to sand. The other thing we're going to do is protect the PCB, or printed circuit board. So I'm just going to take a piece of masking tape, and I'm going to just press it onto the circuit board area, and then I'm just going to take some scissors, and I'm just going to cut around so I make a nice disc of masking tape. Snip off the little edges. Now we have a nice disc of masking tape covering and protecting the printed circuit board. Alright, so the prep work is done. Got the saber out of the way so I can work. And step one, or method number one, for sanding this blade is going to be the simplest in terms of what you'll need, but probably the most difficult in terms of physical labor. So all you need is a piece of sandpaper. And I've got this 180 grit sandpaper. You probably don't want anything finer than that, and by finer I mean a higher number. If anything, you want a lower number, maybe a 100 grit, or even 80 you might be able to get away with. And what you want to do is, instead of just sanding the saber, obviously you want to be careful not to sand above that line into the masking tape. Kind of fold it around, get a nice little grip like that, and make a little cradle that you don't want to grip too hard, and you basically twist back and forth very slowly. Take your time. And you move the saber so that you're getting an even sand all the way around, and eventually you'll be able to sand this down so you'll find that it actually fits differently. Now this will take quite a while, and your wrists and your forearms are going to get very sore, but take your time. If this is the method that you choose, or if it's the only one available to you, you take your time, do it in bursts, take breaks, hydrate, and eventually you will get a really good result with this method. but I've got a couple of other methods that may speed things up. All right, the next method you might want to try is the Dremel method. Now, a word of caution. A Dremel with a sanding drum can easily get away from you, and that's why even with the masking tape on, you can mark up your blade, or worse, you could damage your PCB in the end here. So you want to be very careful with how you do this. Now, I've got my Dremel on a cable here, so let's see if I can work it in a way. What I'm going to do, essentially, is I'm going to basically just go and do some grooves. I'm probably going to sweep it just this way, so that if I'm sweeping it this way and it catches, it doesn't drag across my PCB. So I'm just going to do this with the Dremel spinning. It's not spinning right now. A rotary tool, I should say. I'm going to make a series of grooves like this. Now you want to do your best to kind of space them, keep them even, and keep rotating. I don't know if you can see I'm turning the blade as I'm going. And then eventually you're gonna shave down, sand down the meat of your blade to a place where you can then again finish it with the sandpaper, make it a little bit more even. You're gonna see the marks with the Dremel, and like I said, you want to take your time and keep measuring it and do it in small chunks so that you don't end up going too deep. I want to make sure not to go into my masking tape area. Like that. Now, if I were to keep going, I would eventually get down and make this blade smaller, and I could finish it off with the sanding paper, but I've got an even better way. All right, the third method, which is the method that I use most often when I do blades, because I'm doing a couple of them at a time usually. It just really involves a really inexpensive belt sander that I've inverted and bolted down to this bench. Now, that's really all you'll need for the step 3. However, I also recommend having something that you can brace the blade on. So what I've done is I've eyeballed where the blade sits on my belt sander, and I've wanted to get it just at the right angle, which I'll show you in a minute why. So what I've got is I've got this clamp on the ladder, so the blade rests in here, so I can rotate the blade while the belt sander is on, and as I apply downward pressure, I'm going to rotate it so that I get an even sand around the blade and not flat spots. And then if it's at the right angle, I should be able to sand down the dimensions of my blade so that it fits really nice without having to finish it off or do anything like that. Now before I turn the belt sander on, I'm going to show you a little trick that I use to make sure I'm getting a nice even sand. I use a pencil, or in this case so you can see it, I'm going to use a Sharpie. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw some lines right across the area that I'm going to be sanding. And so if my angle is right, those lines will sand off evenly. But if my angle is wrong, and I'll demonstrate wrong a little bit, one side or another will sand off and show me that I'm not actually doing it right. You ready? Okay, here we go. Okay, after a few seconds of rotating on the sander, you can see that my angle is off. I can even see it's all sanded here and it hasn't even touched here. I wanted to make an extreme, obvious example, but yours may be a little bit more subtle. So now I'll place it in my groove and we'll try again. Okay, now as you can see, those marks are sanding off much more evenly. So I'm going to keep going like that. And you know, sometimes if your belt is worn inconsistently, you may get a little bit of inconsistencies in there. That's why it's a good idea to use the markers anyways. That way you can find the rough spots on your belt and make a nice even sand as you go. So I'm going to finish this up, but what I'm going to recommend next is that we do test fits. So I'm going to go test fit that even though I haven't sanded off very much, just to make sure, because you'd hate to go to all this work and then make your tight blade too loose. What you want is a perfect fit. So if you take your time and test fit regularly, then you're going to end up with that perfect fit. I want to point out too that when you're doing this, it's best to have a right angle to your belt rather than have an angle like that and risk gouging into your tape. That way you can, I've kind of moved it a little bit so there isn't a stark line where the sanding ends. It's kind of graduated so that it slides in a little bit better and will get tight right at the end. Now I've test fit this and I know it's right, so I'll give you a quick little look. So I've taken off the tape, and you might be able to see where my sand line ends. There's the pencil mark. I can rub that off. So I've test fit that, and I know that this is going to fit perfectly in my saber, and I'm happy with my result. I can now take off the tape protecting my printed circuit board, and if I want, I can finish off on the belt sander with a little bit of a bevel, which I will to make that nice and rounded, and to make this edge nice and rounded, and we're done. So after finishing up on the belt sander, this is my blade, this is the fit. Exactly what I wanted. And to make sure, yeah, the NeoPixels are making perfect contact. Now I can secure my blade screw and go battle some Sith. I hope this has been helpful in your adventures in doing your own sabers or getting a perfect fit for your blade and your saber. Thanks again for watching. Please subscribe to my channel and click that like button so you'll see whatever I end up coming up with and putting on YouTube. Until next time.